here we are, my beautifully depraved little audience. The fire has burned, the tyrant bleeds, and the dust has yet to settle. But tell me, what grows in the soil of ruin? In the last hour, we watched Hawksmere tear itself apart, lies turned to ash, blood turned to justice. And now, amid the wreckage, something far more dangerous stirs: hope. Alianor de Clervaux, once a trembling ornament of a cruel man's household, now commands a legion of the broken. Her gown is in tatters, her hands blistered, her soul raw, and yet she commands the living as if born to it. While the mind groans like a wounded beast, she forges order from chaos, grace from ruin. Oh, how the mighty fall, and how the fallen rise more magnificent still. But make no mistake, my loves, rebirth is never gentle. Every resurrection demands its sacrifice. So listen closely. The ashes are still warm, and ghosts do not go quietly.
The Scandalous Hours, Chapter 14, Ashes and Emergence. From ruin to rebirth in Hawksmere. The silence that followed Alianor's ringing declaration was profound, yet charged with a terrifying potential. It wasn't peace. It was the stillness before a storm surge. The crowd, miners, villagers, families, stood frozen. A tableau of shock, fury, and dawning, absolute certainty. Every eye was locked on the small, mud-spattered, blood-stained figure of Alianor de Mowbray, standing tall amidst the devastation, the heavy gold de Mowbray signet ring held aloft in her trembling hand. It glinted dully in the gray light, a tiny, damning sun. The symbol of Roland's original sin, his foundational lie, lay exposed in the palm of the woman he had broken. Roland, standing isolated a dozen paces away, was a ruined statue. The blood from Alianor's knife slash had crusted darkly on his cheek and jaw, a grotesque mask over features drained of all color, leaving him ashen. The incandescent rage that had fueled him moments before had vanished, extinguished by the undeniable reality of the ring and the utter collapse of his authority. His guards had melted away, becoming mere spectators at the edge of the churned ground. His shoulders slumped, not in defeat, but in a chilling emptiness. He stared at the ring, then at Alianor, his eyes devoid of recognition, as if seeing a vengeful spirit risen from the ashes of Hawksmere. The mind's final, shuddering groan seemed to echo the death rattle of his reign. The stillness shattered. Chaos resumes, a different kind. The paralysis broke, not with violence towards Roland, but with the agonizing reality of the mind collapse reasserting itself. A woman's piercing shriek cut through the silence. "My John! He's in there! Please!" The cry acted as a catalyst. The crowd's fury towards Roland didn't vanish. It was merely subsumed by the more immediate, visceral terror for the men still trapped. The demand for justice morphed into a desperate plea for rescue. "Forget him!" Old Tom roared, gesturing contemptuously at the broken lord before turning towards the choked mine entrance. "Our lads are dying." To the mine. Shovels. Timbers. Now. The surge towards the rubble pile blocking the entrance was frantic, disorganized, driven by raw panic and love. Men scrambled, grabbing tools abandoned moments before. Women and older children joined, clawing at smaller rocks with bare hands. The earlier unity, forged against Roland, fragmented into individual, desperate struggles against the mountain. Alianor's transformation. From victim to commander. Alianor lowered her hand, the ring clenched tightly in her bloody fist. The surge of righteous defiance that had propelled her to find it, to hold it high, didn't fade. It transformed. Seeing the frantic, disorganized efforts at the mine entrance, the wails of the families, the sheer scale of the disaster Roland's greed had caused, ignited a different fire within her. The numbness, the passivity were incinerated. She wasn't Lady de Mowbray anymore. She was Alianor de Clervaux, daughter of Hawksmere, and people were dying. She shoved the ring, deep into her hidden pocket, beside the carved wolf and sparrow. Action, not accusation, was needed now. Her gaze swept the chaotic scene, her mind, sharpened by years of managing a decaying estate under pressure, clicking into gear. "Gareth!" Her voice, clear and commanding, cut through the din, startling those nearby. The foreman, who had been numbly trying to direct a few men, looked up, his face etched with despair for his trapped comrades. "Gareth!" "Is there a second entrance? An air shaft? Anything?" Gareth blinked, momentarily stunned by her authority. Aye, milady. The old ventilation shaft, 1/2 mile west, but it's narrow, unstable. Can it be cleared? Faster than this?" Alianor gestured towards the massive rubble pile at the main entrance. Hope warred with fear on Gareth's grimy face. "Maybe, if we can get to it, but the path's rough. Then we go there. Now." Alianor turned, her eyes scanning the crowd. You, and you." She pointed at 3 strong-looking miners not actively digging. "Go with Gareth. Take axes, ropes, clear that shaft. Speed is life." The men, galvanized by her decisive command, nodded grimly and grabbed tools, following Gareth as he broke into a run towards the western path. She turned back to the main entrance. "Tom!" The blacksmith looked up from levering a large rock. "Organize the line here, not everyone digging at once. Form chains, buckets for debris. We need order, not panic. You there." She pointed to a cluster of women. "Gather any cloth you can find. Tear sheets, aprons. We'll need bandages, water. Bring water skins, buckets from the stream. Now." Her orders, sharp, practical, born of necessity, cut through the chaos. People listened. Tom started barking orders, forming efficient chains. Women scattered, ripping fabric, running for water. The frantic energy gained focus. Alianor didn't hesitate. She moved towards the rubble pile herself, ignoring the filth on her gown, grabbing a discarded shovel. She wouldn't just command, she would share the burden. The sight of the blood-stained lady working alongside them further galvanized the rescuers. Eamon's agony, witness and weakness. Eamon watched Alianor's transformation with awe and a piercing agony of his own. He had started towards her the moment the guards backed down, limping heavily, his ribs screaming with every step, the axe now a crutch. He saw her hold the ring aloft, saw her shift instantly into command, saw the people respond to her strength. Pride surged through him, fierce and bright. This was the woman he'd glimpsed in the forest. The fire Roland had tried to smother, blazing now brighter than ever. But his body betrayed him. The pain from his earlier beating, exacerbated by the frantic exertion of intervening, and the cold, was overwhelming. Dizziness washed over him. He stumbled, the axe slipping from his grasp as he clutched his injured ribs, a groan escaping his lips. He sank to one knee in the mud, the world tilting. He couldn't reach her. He couldn't help. He could only watch, helpless, as she stepped into the void Roland's downfall had created, while his own strength failed. Father Clement's return and Roland's containment. Father Clement, having reached the relative safety of the scrubby trees as Eamon urged, paused, gasping for breath, his cheek throbbing from the guard's blow. He saw the shift in the scene. Alianor commanding the rescue, the crowd focused on the mine, Roland standing isolated and broken. He saw Eamon fall, duty ward with caution. He couldn't abandon them. Emerging cautiously from the trees, Clement hurried to Eamon's side. "Eamon, easy, son, easy." He helped the wounded man sit back against a large rock, away from the worst of the chaos. Eamon's face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead, despite the cold. "Your wounds? Forget me," Eamon rasped, his eyes fixed on Alianor's figure directing the bucket line. "Help them. Help her." Clement followed his gaze, seeing Alianor's bloody gown, her determined face. He also saw Roland. The broken lord hadn't moved. He stood like a stone, staring blankly at the mud, the blood drying on his face, seemingly oblivious. But Clement saw the dangerous flicker in his eyes when they occasionally lifted towards Alianor. Hatred, cold and implacable, still simmered beneath the shock. "He's not finished," Clement murmured, a chill running down his spine, despite the rescue efforts. He couldn't let Roland simply stand there, a venomous snake waiting to strike amidst the chaos. He scanned the crowd. His eyes fell on two burly miners, brothers he knew from the village, who were momentarily waiting their turn in the bucket line. "Jory! Mick!" he called, waving them over. The men approached, wary but respectful of the priest. "Father?" "That man," Clement pointed at Roland, keeping his voice low but firm. "He's dangerous. He caused this. He needs to be secured, now, before he tries something or escapes." The brothers exchanged a glance, then looked at Roland's slumped, bloody figure. Resolve hardened on their faces. They remembered the accusations, the ring, the cave-in. They nodded grimly. Without a word, they strode towards Roland. He didn't react as they grabbed his arms roughly. He offered no resistance as they bound his wrists tightly behind his back with a length of rope Mick produced from his belt. Only when they shoved him forward, towards the assay office, did a spark of awareness return, a low growl escaping his lips. But he was powerless. The brothers hauled him into the small timber building and barred the door from the outside, posting themselves as guards. Roland de Mowbray was contained. The rescue, darkness, and hope. At the main entrance, progress was agonizingly slow. The rubble pile was immense, unstable. Every rock moved threatened to dislodge more. The muffled cries from within had grown fainter, more desperate. Fear hung heavy. Alianor worked alongside Tom, her hands blistered and bleeding, her gown ruined, her hair escaping its braid and coated in dust. She ignored it all, driven by the rhythmic chant of heave, the scrape of shovels, the desperate hope in the eyes of the waiting families. Suddenly, a shout came from the western path. "Hoy, at the shaft!" Heads turned. Gareth and the three miners Alianor had sent came running back, covered in fresh dirt, but their faces alight with frantic hope. "We cleared it," Gareth gasped, leaning on his knees. "The old vent shaft. It's tight, but we got through. We heard 'em. We heard voices. Jory's down there. Others." A ragged cheer went up. Tears streamed down faces. "Can we get them out?" Alianor demanded, wiping grime from her eyes. "Aye, milady, but it's narrow. We need ropes. Slim men. We can haul 'em up." Alianor didn't hesitate. "Tom, ropes. Get ropes. You. She pointed to the slimmest, strongest-looking young miners. "Go with Gareth. Get them out. Now." The focus shifted. Ropes were found. The chosen rescuers sprinted after Gareth back towards the vent shaft. Hope, fragile but potent, bloomed amidst the despair. Alianor sagged for a moment against a timber support. The adrenaline ebbing, leaving, exhaustion, and the full weight of the horror in its wake. She looked towards the assay office, where Roland was held, then towards the rocks, where Clement tended to Eamon. Her gaze lingered on Eamon, pale and injured. A different kind of fear pierced her, consequences and care. The wounded. As the first rescued miners began to emerge from the vent shaft, coughing, bleeding, terrified but alive, carried or helped by their comrades, the immediate crisis shifted to triage. The open space before the mine became a makeshift infirmary. Alianor, drawing on half-remembered knowledge from Hawksmere's herb lore and Eamon's teachings, took charge again, her voice hoarse but steady. "Lay them here." Gently. Bess. She spotted her maid, who had arrived with others from the keep, her face pale but determined, carrying an armful of torn sheets. Bandages, clean water, Father Clement. The priest, having ensured Eamon was stable for the moment, hurried over. "We need to clean wounds, stop the bleeding." "You know the prayers, Father, but we need hands too." Clement nodded, rolling up his sleeves, his face set. He began washing grit from a miner's lacerated arm. Bess and other women followed Alianor's instructions, tearing cloth into strips, fetching water, holding hands, murmuring comfort. Alianor moved between the injured, assessing, directing, her touch gentle but firm. She cleaned a deep gash on a young miner's forehead, her hands steady, Despite the tremors of exhaustion, she recognized some of the faces. Men who had worked Hawksmere land, tenants Roland had bullied. Seeing them broken, suffering because of his greed, fueled a cold fury beneath her fatigue. She glanced towards Eamon again. Clement had helped him over. He sat propped against a rock, watching her, his expression unreadable. His own injuries needed tending, but he seemed content for now to observe her in her element. The lady of the manor transformed into a battlefield healer. Their eyes met across the makeshift infirmary. 1,000 unspoken words hung in the air. Relief, fear, the memory of the forest, the horror of the weeks apart, the blood on her hands, his and Roland's. The connection was electric, fraught with joy and profound pain. Lord Edmund's awakening. A shocking intervention. The clatter of an approaching cart drew attention. It was a rough farm cart, driven by one of the few remaining loyal Hawksmere grooms. Inside, propped on sacks, wrapped in blankets, sat Lord Edmund de Clervaux. Beside him, wide-eyed and holding his hand, was Bess. She must have ridden back to fetch him. The sight of the frail, senile old lord caused a stir. People paused in their tasks, staring. Edmund's usual vacant expression was gone. His watery blue eyes scanned the scene. The injured men, the ruined mine entrance, the crowd, Alianor, in her bloodied, ruined green gown, Roland bound and guarded in the assay office. A strange lucidity seemed to sharpen his gaze. He pointed a trembling finger, not at the mine, but at the assay office. De Mowbray, he croaked, his voice surprisingly clear. Viper. Nesting in my house. He turned his piercing gaze on Alianor. Girl, you stopped him. It wasn't a question. It was an acknowledgement, startling in its clarity. Then his eyes fixed on Eamon, recognizing him, despite the beard and grime. Thorne's boy. Good blood. Wronged. He closed his eyes for a moment, seeming to gather strength. When he opened them, he looked directly at Father Clement. Priest, witness, Sir Godfrey, not natural. He took a wheezing breath. De Mowbray's hand, in his cup. A collective gasp went up. Lord Edmund, in his fleeting moment of clarity, had just accused Roland of murdering his own son, Alianor's husband. The final, unthinkable crime was laid bare. Edmund's head drooped, the lucidity fading as quickly as it came, leaving him mumbling incoherently again. But his words hung in the air, heavier than the mine dust. Alianor and Eamon, the chapel of broken things. As the immediate flurry of treating the most critical injuries subsided and the rescued miners were being tended or carried back to the village on makeshift stretchers, Alianor felt the weight of everything crash down. The adrenaline that had sustained her evaporated, leaving her shaking, hollow, covered in grime and blood. Roland's, the miners, her own. She needed space, air, away from the eyes, the smells, the lingering horror. She walked unsteadily towards the small, dilapidated chapel of St. Cuthbert, nestled in the copse nearby, the same place Father Clement had sought solace. Pushing open the creaking door, she stumbled inside, collapsing onto a dusty pew near the back, hidden in shadow. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking, with silent, wrenching sobs. The enormity of the day, the confrontation, the blood, the cave-in, the rescue, Edmond's accusation, overwhelmed her. She cried for the dead and injured miners, for her own violation, for the sheer, exhausting terror of it all. She didn't hear the door open softly. She didn't hear the limping footsteps approach until he was standing beside the pew. She looked up, startled, tears streaking through the grime on her face. Eamon. He looked terrible, pale, swaying slightly, leaning heavily on the axe handle, his face bruised, his tunic stained with old and new blood. But his eyes, those intense, watchful eyes, were fixed on her with an expression that stole her breath. A tumultuous mix of awe, anguish, tenderness, and a deep, burning anger at what had been done to her. He didn't speak. He couldn't. He simply sank onto the pew beside her, the wood groaning under his weight, a groan that echoed his own pain. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly, not to touch her, but to hover near her arm, as if afraid she might shatter. The silence in the cold chapel was thick, charged with everything unsaid. Finally, Alianor found her voice, hoarse and raw. "You're alive." It was a statement, a prayer, a sob. "Barely," he rasped, a ghost of a smile touching his lips, gone instantly. "Thanks to Clement." And stubbornness. He looked down at his hands, calloused and bruised. I heard what he did to you. What you endured. Every day." His voice broke. He clenched his fists, the knuckles white. "I should have been here. I should have stopped him." "You tried," Alianor whispered, fresh tears welling. "They told me. The blood. They said you were dead." "They tried," Eamon said flatly, the memory darkening his eyes. "Dumped me in a ravine, left me for dead. Took me days. Crawled. Hid." He shuddered. "Clement found me. Kept me hidden. Fed me." He looked back at her, his gaze searching hers. "The ring? The wolf? You found them. You stood against him. You were magnificent." The word held a reverence that made her flush. "I was terrified," she admitted, the truth spilling out. "Every second. I only did it for Bess and then for them." She gestured vaguely towards the mine. "And for the truth." She touched the hidden pocket where the ring, the carvings, lay heavy. "He took everything, Eamon. Everything." "Not everything," Eamon said fiercely, his hand finally settling, gentle but firm, over hers, where it rested on the dusty pew. His touch sent a jolt through her, warm and terrifyingly real after the numbness. "Not your spirit. Not your courage. He never touched that. I saw it today. Hawksmere saw it." He squeezed her hand. "He took nothing. You didn't claw back." Alianor looked down at their joined hands, her small, blistered, blood-stained hand under his large, battered, protective one. The connection, the physical reality of him alive and here, was overwhelming. Weeks of despair, terror, and isolation warred with the fragile, fierce hope his presence ignited. She leaned her head against the cold stone wall, closing her eyes, too exhausted to process the storm of emotions. The carved wolf and sparrow pressed against her skin, symbols of survival, of connection, of a fight not yet over. Outside the chapel, the sounds of the aftermath continued, shouts, cries, the weary work of salvage. But inside the dim sanctuary, amidst the dust and shadows, Alianor de Clervaux and Eamon Thorne, both broken, both survivors, sat in silence, holding on to the only solid thing left in their shattered world, each other. The ashes of the old order lay thick, but from them, something new, fragile, and fiercely alive was beginning to emerge. The scandalous hours were ending. The reckoning was complete. The hard work of rebuilding, in every sense, was about to begin.
And so, from the blood and soot of Hawksmere's ruin, something exquisite begins to breathe again. The tyrant is bound, the priest forgiven, the miners saved, but at what cost? Alianor, our bloodied phoenix, has shed her title, her fear, her chains. She stands among the dying embers not as Lady de Mowbray, but as Alianor de Clervaux, reborn in truth and defiance. Eamon Thorne lives, though his body breaks. Father Clement prays with blood on his hands. Even the earth itself seems to sigh in weary absolution. Yet, do you feel it? That chill beneath the triumph? That whisper in the dust that says the story isn't done? The hour of reckoning may have ended, but scandal, my loves, scandal never dies. For in the chapel of broken things, where two survivors sit hand in hand, something new begins. something tender, dangerous, and wholly unfit for polite society. Until next we meet, my wicked hearts, breathe softly, walk carefully, and never trust the silence after the storm.